Hello, this is Brian Foster coming to you on August 22nd, 2021. We are live streaming. Please tell your friends that we live stream and check actually subscribe to YouTube, hit the bell, and then you'll be notified when we live stream. We're trying to live stream now every Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday. And Mondays, we're having a Q&A, questions and answers about Spiritism. But tonight we're talking about Evolution in Two Worlds, chapter 13 and 14. We're talking about pregnancies and what the spirit world tells us about them. So let's get started. So this is chapter 13, failed pregnancy. The question is, how are we to understand the cases of failed pregnancies when there is no reincarnating spirit to direct the formation of the fetus? The answer is, in every case involving fetal formation without the presence of a reincarnating spirit, the phenomenon obeys the mother mental modes. In instances of this type, there are, for example, those where the woman is undergoing a trial readjustment of the reproductive center. Habitually nourishes the strong desire to become a mother. She impregnates the reproductive cells with a high dose of magnetic attraction through which, with the help of a sperm cell, she forms a fruitless embryo, which then develops, albeit in vain, at the level of the mother's intensity of thought. Though through successive impacts, such as thought conditions, the cells of the reproductive apparatus, and they respond to her desires according to the principles of automatism and reflection. On the other hand, there are, for example, cases where the woman deliberately rejects her pregnancy and expels the reincarnating spirit in the early weeks of gestation, undoing the cellular processes of the fetal constitution, thereby acquiring with her attitude a terrible debt before destiny. This shows you there's there's so much to this. It is so there is I guess there is ability to for a woman who has such thoughts to actually start creating an embryo. Then it says with the help of a sperm cell. So even helps create an embryo, but there was no planned soul, spirit to be into that embryo. So of course, it doesn't work. So I didn't know that before. And then also I have read in instances where women will mentally deliberately reject, and get themselves in such a mental condition that they will reject that baby, unfortunately, and then lose it. And that is I've read instances of that in several books, but mainly the ones that I remember right now is some of the books by Andre Louise, where a woman who didn't want a baby, she went drinking and dancing, drank too much alcohol, all these things, and then deliberately lost the child, which, as they say, it's a terrible debt. It reminds me of when in the book No Solar, and they didn't show this in the movie. Now, the movie's great. This is one scene they didn't show in the movie, where Andre Luis is around the wall of No Solar, and this woman says, let me in, let me in. I want to come to this heavenly city. I've been in the lower zone too long. And so they let her in, and then they find out that, well, they don't let her in, I'm sorry. Then a person comes out, a more superior, a higher level spirit, I should say, than Andre Luis, and says, now Andre, look at this woman. And he looks at the woman and he goes, now, do you think she's ready? You see all these black spots? He looks at the black spots and he goes, well, what are they? I go, well, look deeper. So this woman had helped give, and I don't want to say the word because YouTube will knock me off. So, they gave doctors help to get rid of infants. And so she's right now, she's not ready to come into this celestial city. So very sad. So I hate to see that. So anyway, it's and I'll be honest, I thought when I was younger, before I became a spiritist, and I thought, well, you know what? That's no one's choice. I mean, that's no one's right to stop someone from having that done. That's a woman's choice, and I still believe it is. I mean, I don't think it should be illegal at all, but it's a terrible choice, and I think people should be helped to understand that when karma comes into this, there are things to pay down the road. And in fact, in the book psychographed by Waldo Franco, the Earthly Transition, they were saying that they were having a lot of these spirits who come to Earth to help us become a planet of regeneration. That was around the year 2000. So a lot of them are getting older now. And what they said is, we're going to let these spirits that come into families who volunteer for them, and they could not have their own child, so we're going to let them go to these fertility clinics. Sorry, I couldn't get that out. And they'll have a child that way. Now, they've done not good things in the past, but this is to help them, pay their debts for their past of how they handled families and so on. So there's a lot of repercussions here. Let's go to chapter 14. And that's talking about the actual act of what they say is getting rid of the baby on purpose. And here's the question. Realizing that in the vast majority of cases, crimes entailing criminality induced getting rid of that occur among the most responsible classes of the earthly community. How is one to view the expiatory process in this regard if such crimes are almost completely ignored by human justice? So here we are. This is the key. Here's the answer for those who wish to know. On the earthly plane, each nation has the penal code that is appropriate for its level of evolution. However, considering the universe in its totality as the divine kingdom, we can see that the Creator's goodness toward all creatures is the basic law. The willful transgressions of which are corrected in the transgressor, him or herself. The natural objective of this is to achieve, in each circle of work in the cosmic arena, the maximum equilibrium with the maximum respect for the rights of others, and with the least punishment possible. However, considering that in the breath of God in which we move and exist, perfect justice is unfailingly built upon perfect love. Every reparation involving that basic law occurs in terms of life eternal and not in terms of the fragmentary life of human incarnation. So let's talk about this for a second. They're talking about perfect justice, and I actually was reading in this other book called Through the Mist, which I'm going to be doing later on Tuesdays after I'm done with the book I'm talking about now. And they're talking about justice and mercy. And I get many people saying, well, isn't there mercy? And when you get to the spirit world, if you repent, you get mercy. And the answer is, mercy is necessary in societies that are imperfect like we are, because there's not perfect justice. Now, you notice that they use the word perfect justice. And now this is a concept I hadn't really seen before in Spiritist writings, but I saw it in this writing. It's not Spiritist writing, but it parallels Spiritism a lot. They're saying that mercy is wonderful and is great on less evolved worlds like Earth, but in the spirit world, you don't need mercy because justice is perfect. So you need mercy on Earth because justice is so imperfect. You got to give people the benefit of the doubt. You have to forgive them things. But in the spirit world, justice knows exactly what it's doing, and what it's going to happen is it's not going to be punishment, right? It's reparation. Just like you said, every reparation involving the basic law occurs in terms of life eternal and not in terms of the fragmentary life of human incarnation. So what they're saying is, you will have to atone for this. And the other interesting thing is how that is, we don't know yet. But perfect justice will take into account everything about that person or persons. And they will figure out a way Not to punish each person, but to educate each person to say, no, this is not the way you have. And they'll also realize that people did that in a culture of, hey, no problem, you can do that. But also that there are people saying, I don't think that's right. So justice will be done that way, right? Because if the it's just like the spirit world with primitive spirits who, when they're in tribes, whatever, and they kill other tribes, it's like, well, that's murder, kind of, but war, stuff like that. But that's just the culture, and therefore, it's not as they know that that habit's going to have to be eradicated later down the line. So you have to bring all these things into thinking about how this works. It's because they know everything about us. Okay, let me read the next sentence. After all, one lifetime can be full of rights and wrongs, merits and demerits, and the Lord's mercy prescribes that the criminal is not to be punished with an indiscriminate amount of expiatory suffering, which would be considered a pleasure in dealing out punishment in the tribunals of destiny that are invariably ruled by sovereign equity, but that the wrongs be removed from its victims with a possible reduction in the suffering. So when someone does this, what I think people don't understand is you are deciding when to stop a reincarnation. You are deciding when to stop a life. That is not up to us. We're not allowed to do that. We are allowed to stop a life in self-defense. We are allowed not to be punished for when we are a soldier in a war and we're being told to do that. That is, they're not going to do it. I mean, I don't know what exactly, but what I've heard is that no, you're not going to be punished for that because that, whereas the society and culture, what's going on right now. And again, as I said before, since this is so many people say it's no big deal and it's a great thing, which I don't agree with, but you're going to be educated that no, you can't do that. Now, but there's another case, and that is the case of the soul who wanted to be part of that birth. And in that little vignette, I talked about one of the books by Andre Louise, and where that woman deliberately did things for her to lose that soul from her body. That soul was mad. I think it was a boy. He wanted to come back, and it was important for him to come back and be her child. What that poor lady did, she has a spirit that wants revenge. Now, the spirit's not very advanced. The spirit should forgive her, right? But after all, people are peoples. Spirits are immature spirits. And so now he was going to spend the rest of his time trying to obsess and ruin her life because he had planned to come back. And what people don't understand is that reincarnation isn't like, oh, there's plenty of opportunities for anytime you want. No, reincarnation is a privilege, not a right, just like a driver's license. And it's not easy to plan for people's reincarnations. When you think of the earth is 7 billion people with all the complications, and everyone has their own trials and tribulations, and there's all the interconnectedness, the complexity is mind-boggling. It's beyond any of our computers that we have, just like nothing. We are like a abacus compared to what they're. We're not even a computer. We're like an abacus compared to their computer power. So, and you know that too, because the interesting thing, like in NDEs, if you ever read an NDE, they're very interesting. In Spiritism, I have a book called The Spirit World Talks to Us, where I explain the backstory of NDEs, really what the spirit world is trying to do. But the interesting thing is people will report in their near-death experiences, NDEs, that in one instance, I can give you an example of, okay, and the guy was wounded quite badly. But they said, look, you can live, but you'll live with some pain as you get older. But I want to show you the effect of you not going back and living. And then he showed him in visions what happened to his sister, She didn't do very well. His poor parents got divorced because he was dead, and he was like the first child to go to college. And then for him to die was just a horrible thing. They could not stay together. And both parents just kind of didn't do well. So think of that he could see this whole vision. So think, how is that done? How can you do that? To give someone and go through, okay, and then create like a 3D movie in an instant and say, okay, well, if you make this choice, this is what's going to happen in your life. And these are the threads that are going to happen. Or if you make choice B, this is what's going to happen. And you can actually see it happening. This is the complexity of the spiritual. This is what's so exciting about Spiritism. If you start reading into this, you start to understand is what a world we're going to go back to. We are in this summer camp of Earth where we're trying to change our personality and our character, take out our primitive emotions and do better. And we're going to go back to this land where thought is action. And we are still students learning how to control our will and learning what this whole spirit world's all about. How do you control your thoughts to create things? Exciting. So we get back to the main point. So that's the other point, is that if that's done, there's another spirit on the other side. That spirit may be understanding, or the spirit may not be. And so that might be problems. And then also the fact that you did violate one of the divine laws. There's have to be some sort of reparation. And then you're going to have to forgive yourself. Not easy. So where was I? Okay, after all, one lifetime can be full of rights and wrong. I think it's but that wrong would be removed from its victims with a possible reduction in the suffering. Thus, according to the universal principle, cosmic law, clearly expressed in Jesus' teaching that says, to each according to his deeds. So let me bring this up, cosmic. Let me bring up karma. I think this is a good one to see. Better to show that in the stream, why I'm talking, so people can understand. And then, to each according to his deed. That's what Jesus said. We hold within ourselves the roots of our own wrongs, roots to be extirpated using our own efforts in the company of those attuned to our circle of guilt, and with whom, before eternal justice, our debts are associated. Based on such fundamentals, any one pilgrimage in the flesh can be interspersed with credits and debts, and can end with appearances of their irreprehensible normalcy for the soul that discarnates, and that is esteemed by those sharing its experience. Another reincarnation follows, in which it undertakes its redemption, bearing on its shoulders the consequence of the wrongs it incurred before God and itself, in order to rehabilitate itself before the divine harmony, thus living temporarily alongside spirits undergoing a regeneration of the same sort. So what they're saying is, in your next life, you'll have to, there's a price to be paid. What that is, you're not sure. It may be that, again, they'll try to have that soul come to you, or you will be the child of the soul that you tried to get rid of. It's all, you never know how the spirit world works. It's very complicated. Next paragraph. This is how the man and woman accomplishes in getting rid of what they don't want, especially the woman, whose degree of responsibility in such wrongs is much greater due to the life she promised to honor with the nobility of sublime motherhood. Throw their psychosomatic energies into disarray, causing a profound imbalance in the reproductive centers, and implanting in the tissues of their souls the seeds of the ills that will sprout later at an opportune time. Now that is sad to hear, is that they're setting up, and really what that is, and you can do that for maybe other things too, is it's causing stress. And as you cause stress, you're causing your body to be unhealthful. And so that, and that's why one of the books, one of the best things we can do for our health is listen to our conscience. And in fact, I have a whole book, How to Live Inner Peace Through Spiritism, in which I go through and I talk about how to ascend, how to get your mind, how to rewire your brain, listen to your conscience, all that. And as you become a more calm and person who follows the set of divine laws, which in your conscience and instincts, those are the two things that are given to us by the spirit world, God and Jesus, when we are reborn into this world, we have those with us all the time. So I think that's an important one for people is to look at is how to live inner peace and spiritism. It'll give you a set of steps to achieve that. So let's get back. So again, like anything else, when you do some wrong, even though you don't think it's wrong, but you have that little hint that it is, and that's what I keep telling people all the time. When filter everything through your conscience. And then if you think, oh, I'm going to be happy with this, I'm going to make a lot of money. But then there's something in the pit of your stomach that says, I'm not sure. That's your conscience trying to tell you, don't do it. Yeah, I know you're thinking you're going to lose a good opportunity. And I know, you're going to think yourself a loser and your friends are going to make fun of you, but don't do it. Start learning to listen to your conscience. So I'll keep going on. Oh, the next paragraph kind of backs up what I just said. This occurs not only because remorse becomes entrenched in their being like a magnetic viper, but also because they unavoidably assimilate the vibrations of anguish and despair, and sometimes the revolt and revenge of the spirits whom the law had decreed to become children of their flesh in the endeavor of renewal. So that's what I just said earlier, is that there are souls that were lined up because they want to improve themselves, and they were in there, and then bam, it's over. For men, the results of this action always appear in the lifetime following the one in which the death was incurred, in the form of testicular diseases, wow, various endocrine disorders, or mental disturbances, entailing obsession by invisible forces emitted by hateful discarnate spirits who still not can forgive him for having deserted them. So for men who says, yeah, you gotta get rid of this, and encourage and cajole and sometimes force that poor woman to do this terrible thing, there's going to be death for that. And boy, that doesn't sound good. And so Spiritism is interesting. In some aspects, Spiritism, let me rephrase that. Spiritism explains the whole process and organization. But a lot of people don't like to hear, and I get emails and comments, is, well, but this sounds like punishment. This is, and no, it's paying back. And it sounds, it's like, well, if I do something wrong, it means I'm going to have to pay for it. Well, yes. Now, and people don't like that. They go, well, if I'm saying I'm sorry, I shouldn't have to go through that. Well, if you say you're sorry just because you don't want to go through that, you don't really mean it. And you haven't really learned the lesson. Now, why do you need to learn the lesson? And why do you need to improve yourself? Because I'm not gonna deny some of this is pretty, hard on people. And when we go through trials and tribulations, even though we're immortal, and the time at which we go through these trials and tribulations when we're in the spirit world is nothing. But when we're in the human condition, in this covering, it is really there, right? It hurts us. It becomes quite tragic. So the world is not easy. So, but why? And this is the key. As I said before, thought is action. So they're going to let people say, oh, I didn't mean that. And they're going to let them go higher and higher in the spirit hierarchy, where they have such great power that with their wills, they can create rivers, mountains, and with other spirits, they can create whole planets like Christ did with a group of spirits, create the whole solar system and direct the evolution of the earth and cultures and animals. They're going to let people who just say, oh, yeah, I did that, but I won't do it again. No, they're not going to do that. You're not going to be able to rise in the spirit hierarchy to be a productive member of spirit society until you get all these primitive emotions and these mistakes. And there's going to be experiences you have to go along in on the way, right? Until you learn that. It's, it's like you're learning to become a neurosurgeon, but you don't really want to go to class. They're not going to let you operate on anybody if you don't go to class and you go through all the steps necessary to become expert. This is why we go through these things. This is why it sounds harsh. I'm not gonna put sugar coating on it. It sounds harsh. But think of your 2-year-old that painted in the wall or ran out into the street, and you brought, you brought him or her in, and you put them in the corner. Well, and they cried and they stamped their feet, and they said you were the worst parent in the world. That, to them, that sounded harsh. But to the parent, first you're either making them in the future to be a civilized member of society, or you've actually saved their life by not running out into the street. So to them it's harsh, but to you it's like, oh, I am educating this wonderful little child. And that's the same way they look at us. We are being educated. We don't, hey, maybe we don't like being educated. Things and trials I didn't like. I understand them now, but they certainly weren't pleasant, and I didn't like going through them. I had kidney stones, and so what did I do? That was, it was bad, and I've had 2 operations to get rid of them. So I don't like that. So I've done something that had to do with not good as far as with the opposite gender. So, I'm glad I saw spirit. Now I understand, and I'll be very careful. So, I've gone through that, and boy, those are not pleasant. In fact, I remember I started having this attack, and I was in serious pain. And I worked in Seattle, and what I did usually is I lived on Bainbridge Island, and I walked a mile to the ferry, and then I got on the ferry, and I walked probably less than a quarter of a mile to work. It's great. So I made it to the ferry, and I wasn't feeling like it. But then on the ferry, it's just like I could not sit still. I could not do anything. And then this one guy came in and goes, and it was like the middle of the day, right? He goes, well, I'm a nurse. Are you having appendicitis or is it kidney stones? And then he talked to me. He goes, you're having kidney stones. He goes, well, they can take you off the ferry with a wheelchair. And in the ferry, there's like a ramp to go off, and then they'll take you through this whole ramp. You have to walk through the whole ramp to the parking lot. And I'd called my wife, thank God she was home, to meet me, and so they could take me right to the doctor. So, okay, and then the ferry guy came and said, well, just wait till everybody's off, and I'll put you in the wheelchair. So everybody got off. So I had to wait. Everybody got off the ferry. They put me in a wheelchair, and they wheeled me just across the gangplank, right? 10 feet. I go, okay, you got to get off now. I go, what? Well, no, we only walk you off the gangplank. You got to walk yourself to the parking lot. And it was like, looking back, I have to laugh because, okay, boy, I got a double dose of learning there. So if you're on a ferry and you just go ahead and walk off, even if you're bleeding to death, because they'll just like drop your body on the gangplank, so you're off the ferry. So you gotta, if you look back and that's all for a reason, You just have to like, oh my heavens, what the heck did I do? And you just have to laugh at it. So anyway, that's my little story. Okay, next is for women. The consequences are much more serious. Every induced thing that is not therapeutically necessary has been mathematically shown to be followed by traumatic shocks to the spiritual body as many times as this crime against motherhood is repeated. The women who perpetrate it are immersed in an indescribable anguish after death, and the more charitable spirits offer them assistance, recalling their otherwise praiseworthy qualities. The more these women feel morally diminished in their own view, their reproductive center is disordered and troubled, like someone unduly admitted to a joyful beast bearing an open wound that is visible at every moment. That's so sad. These are grave mistakes, unfortunately. Thus, I'll keep reading. Thus, they re-enter physical life, gradually externalizing in their cellular structure the dysfunction that we may classify as the atonic uterus, suffering pregnancy disorders as soon as they initiate the process of motherhood again. The equilibrium of the reproductive center is in complete disarray. Consequently, the salated, mucinous, and intercalated cells, I'm probably pronouncing this wrong, in the fallopian tube musca does not have the strength necessary to drive the egg cell through the endophlenics or to nourish it during the migration impulse due to the hormonal deficiency in the ovary. This results not only in an ectopic pregnancy or heterotopic implantation of the egg, but almost certainly highly important hemorrhagic syndrome due to the implantation of the egg outside the orthotopic endometrium, even when it is already settled within the uterus, often causing the complications of low-lying placentia or hemorrhagic placentia previa, which during labor constitute veritable torture for women with maladjusted reproductive organs. So unfortunately, it sounds like these women are going to have really hard times in their next life. Framed in the disequilibrium of the reproductive center, the woman's life is affected by other organic alterations, such as the premature detachment of the ectopic placenta due to histologic hyperactivity of the chorionic villus, uterine hypokinesia, giving way to the growth of streptococcus or gonococcus after, which these are like bacterial, and these are infections. After endometritis, tuberculosis, cystic degeneration, all that stuff can cause adherence in the fallopian tube, setting up a propitious arena for serious adnexal inflammations. So that sounds like the whole area gets bad as far as infections, in which the ovary and tube undergo the formation of purulent tumors because both are undergoing the same process of deterioration. Circulatory syndromes of an apparently normal pregnancy in the woman, who in the past also corrupted her cardiac center as a result of an induced getting rid of what she wanted to get rid of, resulting in a dysrhythmia of the psychosomatic energies that regulate the electric axis of the heart. Consequently, now in her new incarnation, at the onset of pregnancy, she suffers from cardiovascular insufficiency, with an increase in the circulatory plasma volume due to hormonal deficiency, which leads to serious cardiac disorders. Wow, okay. So there are repercussions, karma. For every action, there is a reaction. I'll carry on. Furthermore, we must remember that if a woman, in tune with the duties of motherhood during her first or even second pregnancy, then yields to not wanting it during subsequent times, she automatically inculcates the genital and spleen centers of the spiritual body with the subtle causes of disequilibrium, starting with the second or third pregnancies in her next lifetime. These causes appear as a huge accumulation of antigen, which causes blood incompatibilities that gradually suffocate through a humulus of the sprout of love that she carefully shelters within herself. Thus, the infirmities of the human body as reflections of the profound depressions of the soul always occur at the right time. well, or at the wrong time. So here's a woman who is paying for, in her next life, well, let's say this life, in her last life, she did something like this. And now she's having lots of problems. Those are what those problems are caused by. I'll carry on. Besides the symptoms we have addressed in this abridged summary of the disease of the woman's reproductive system, there's also a long chapter regarding the nervous system in light of the overexcitement of the cerebral center, resulting in troubling modification of the personality that often appear in the affliction of obsession. We must also point out the deleterious character of the spiritual effects for the people who do these things. Yes, and we talked about that. One of the ones who was helping that operation, that procedure, who they wouldn't let into No Solar because she had all these black marks. Those were all the ones that she'd done. Okay, now here's another question. To improve her current situation, what should the woman who realizes she has debts entailing this bad decision do for her moral improvement before her next existence imposes regenerative afflictions on her? The answer is, we know that it is possible to renew one's destiny each and every day. Those who forsook their own children yesterday can today look after someone else's children who need love and care. In other words, take care of, either adopt or help someone else, or give that love somewhere. And you'll see that many times in Spiritism. When you make a mistake, how do you rectify that mistake? Well, you rectify that mistake by helping others. I'll carry on. The very gospel of the Lord, in the words of the apostle Peter, warns us of the need to ardently cultivate charity toward one another, because charity covers a multitude of sins. So that was a lot to go over. And it was a very sensitive subject. And so I apologize if anyone was offended, but I think Spiritism brings us certain truths. And those certain truths are, sometimes they're marvelous and they're exciting. And sometimes, depending on point of view, it's disconcerting and disheartening. But I'm not going to, this is where I think that Christianity, as it mostly stands today, where they tell you that, yeah, you can do all these crimes and repent at the last moment. And I always thought, well, then why not do all these crimes and repent at the last moment, right? And you're fine. And that never sat with me correctly. And now when I discovered Spiritism, or Spiritism discovered me through the events that I had no control over, I understand how it works. No. First, there is the good news of Spiritism. There is no eternal punishment. That's not there. You will work off through edifying experiences what you have done wrong in the past and learn not to do it again. It's important. And as I said before, it's important because you're going to be this powerful spirit. So you are going through these things. But let me get back on what I was saying. So there are some harsh things here. You have to pay for your past mistakes. And really, don't we tell that to our children? As somewhere that, when they're young, they have no accountability and we just laugh, right? But as they get older, adolescents, we have this concept. Is you got to start taking responsibility for your own actions. Be accountable. Okay, I have a question, so I'm going to show this. Which one of your books is the best to begin with? So I think the best one is really Spiritism 101, The Third Revelation. And you can go to my website, nwspiritism.com, and you can download that for free on PDF. I also have it in, of course, Kindle and paperback and Audible. And Kindle, it's only 99 cents. I made it as least expensive as possible. So it's only 99 cents on Kindle. It all depends how you want to do it, but it's on PDF. So I would say that you can download that. It doesn't cost you anything. And so then that gives you kind of a good summary of the tenets. And then, and everybody learns differently. You can decide. Then I would, from that, I would go to the Spirits book, which is, the codification, the original codification. And some people love it. Some people are like, yeah, it's kind of dense, kind of hard to get through. I also have it on Audible. I mean, not Audible. I have it in Audible format on my website. And then I also have it on my YouTube channel. I've got a playlist called The Spirits Book, and I read every chapter. So you can do that. And then that should give you a good review. And then I would say, then to kind of go back up to the 50,000 foot, and then kind of comes down again. Depends what you want to do. But I would say you might want to go to the Spirit Realm, which is my latest book, which I've written 15 books. This kind of brings everything I've learned and kind of tried to summarize the spirit realm, the physical realm, who you are, how you ascend, kind of everything together. And then you can look at, from my other books, where do you want to get deeper into the subject matter. So that's what I would recommend. I would recommend downloading that free PDF. I would, again, also I forgot to say, the Spirits book is, you can just write in the Spirits book PDF or Allan Kardec space PDF, and you'll find the Spirits book of PDF. That's how I started the Spirits book. And then the Spirit Realm is on, of course, Kindle, paperback, and Audible. So I've got on all three formats. So I hope that, oh good, thank you. That helps you. But it tells you so much. And I think the main thing to remember is that we've been told all this, and also keep in mind that the spirit realm says we're going to be told more as we can handle it, right? Because they say, I get people say, well, the Bible says you can't talk to spirits. The Bible says you can't do this. Well, the Spiritism told us the Bible was an Old and New Testament, and other religious writings, other prophets were given to those people for the culture and the time, the level of technology and culture of when they lived. And so in the Bible, in the Old Testament, you've got, go attack that city, kill everybody in it. Well, that's a horrible thing to say. We wouldn't do that now. But think of the tribe, thousands of years ago. Think of what if Jesus said, something like, well, yeah, you got to take over the city, but treat everybody nicely and don't kill anybody. They'd go, no. They would just reject that person in a minute, right? But no, that's not how the world worked in, thousands of years before Christ, hundreds of years before Christ, even at Christ's time. So you have to keep that in mind. So they're telling us more and more. So they're telling us truths about our lives on earth, how that we are going through a learning experience. But remember, the light at the end of the tunnel is after we're on the planet of atonement, where we go through that whole karma process. Next comes, and we're just starting that, is the planet of regeneration, where we'll still have experiences to do, but they won't be traumatic experiences. We'll be more of a consultative, talking with higher spirits, so we can decide what we want, our career, and what we're going to do. And also on Earth, you won't have the lower spirits. The lower spirits in the lower zone, in the dark abyss, will be taken off the Earth, sent to other places, and we won't have the influences of these kind of less mature spirits upon us. So anyway, tomorrow I'm going to do a question and answer around the same time I did today. And I want to wish everyone a wonderful Sunday, and God bless.